welcome to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe in the studios of our flagship stations, Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. You can join us on Civic Center TV on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99 in the Greater West Bloomfield area. In the Birmingham Bloomfield area, you can also join us on those channels on Birmingham Area Municipal Access, as well as join us on City Cable 15 of Southfield in Southfield on those channels as well. Join us on Channel 10 in Waterford on the Media Network of Waterford, and at 1 o'clock p.m. and 1 o'clock a.m. live to tape on Orion Neighborhood Television on Channel 10 in Orion Township and Lake Orion. You can find us on the radio in the Birmingham, Bloomfield, and Troy area on 88.1 WBFH, The Biff. That is a service of the Bloomfield Hills School District with operations out of Bloomfield Hills High School, joining us each and every day on the Megacast. You can also find us online, civiccentertv.com. Click on our Watch Live link. You'll be able to watch our entire show live from 10 a.m. to 12 noon, as well as our other regular programming, including municipal meetings in the Greater West Bloomfield area, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can also find on our website at civiccentertv.com all of that programming on demand. You can also find us online all across the state of Michigan on My Michigan TV or MyMy. That is available both on its website at mymytv.com, as well as on free apps for your smartphone and your smart TV. Go over to mymytv.com to learn more about where you can download those apps for free and access all of this free content about the state of Michigan by creators all across the Great Lakes state. And if you want to learn more information about any of our partnering television, radio, or web outlets that join us every day here on the Megacast, you can go to our website at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus and then it's at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll be able to find all of that information, including all of our shows, full interviews, and individual episodes as well on demand at our Megacast page. We have links to every single one of our partnering television, radio, and web outlets, so you can learn more about what they do throughout the other 22 hours of the day when they're not joining us on the Megacast Monday through Friday on our live shows, 10 a.m. to 12 noon, or live to tape on places such as Orion Neighborhood Television. Then, as I mentioned, we also have a coronavirus page at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. On that page, right at the top, very helpful links to keep you up to date on this ever-changing pandemic with all the new information that's coming in all the time from across the world on variants, on the spread of the disease, on vaccinations, on precautionary measures, on new rules that are going in place to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Wherever you are, you can learn more information about COVID-19, stay up to date from reliable resources, trusted resources at the federal, state, and local level from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and the Oakland County Health Division, as well as from many of our local municipalities here in Oakland County, where we originate our broadcast. Although I highly recommend, if you're not in Oakland County, you go to your local municipality's website and check out their COVID-19 webpage or any information they may have about how municipal business is being conducted in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's going to be different across the board in every different community. There will be a lot of similarities, but there will also be a lot of differences, and so you want to make sure you're keeping up to date on your hometown, on the local area, at the state level, and the federal level, as well as all around the world as we continue on through this COVID-19 pandemic. Also on our coronavirus page, each and every day we scour many local journalistic outlets from across the state of Michigan and the various media markets, including Detroit, Grand Rapids, Lansing, and up north, and many more, to find our top headlines and stories affecting the COVID-19 pandemic and other information all across the Great Lakes state. Today, our top story from the Detroit Free Press looks into the combination of flu and coronavirus cases in individuals, otherwise known as flu-rona. What you need to know about the co-infection that experts are watching. Again, this is from our friends at the Detroit Free Press. Flu-rona is the name, and it conjures images of cheap cable horror flicks thinking Sharknado. But the flu-COVID dual infections are actually very real. More cases are likely as well, and they're not nearly as terrifying as flying sharks, especially for people who are vaccinated against one or against both diseases. Texas Children's Hospital announced this week that tests confirmed a child was infected with influenza A and SARS-CoV-2, which is the virus that causes COVID-19. The patient was not hospitalized and is recovering at home, the hospital said. No other details were given. Quote, "This is one confirmed case, and of course we'll be working with our colleagues across the country to see if there are more cases and whether we will see a distinct pattern in these cases," said Dr. Jim Verslovich, pathologist-in-chief and COVID-19 Command Center co-leader at the hospital when he talked to reporters this week, Monday. The announcement comes a few days after Israel reported its first confirmed flu-rona case in an unvaccinated pregnant woman at a Beilinson hospital in Petah Tikva, the Times of Israel reports. Health experts expect to see more flu-rona amid rapidly rising flu and coronavirus cases, the latter being driven by the highly contagious Omicron variant. And this isn't the first time healthcare providers have seen co-infections of the flu and COVID-19 as well as other viruses. Texas Children's Hospital was also the first children's hospital in the U.S. to report a co-infection of COVID-19 and respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV, in the summer. Dr. Verslovich said dozens of children with co-infections required hospitalization in that scenario. Quote, but there's no specific treatment or vaccine for RSV, so experts speculate children with quote-unquote flu-rona may experience better outcomes. Quote, "I expect to see plenty of co-infections of flu and COVID going forward, but I don't see anything that suggests it makes COVID infections worse," in closed quote, said Dr. Frank Esper, a physician at the Cleveland Clinic's Children's Hospital for Pediatric Infectious Diseases. Dr. Esper continued on, quote, "Those are two viral pathogens that we actually have medicines for," end closed quote. In addition to life-saving vaccines to prevent severe illnesses, he said, healthcare providers are prepared to treat the infection simultaneously with both Tamiflu and remdesivir. Immunocompromised people are vulnerable to these infections, but co-infections are more likely to occur in young children, experts say, as their immune system is still unfamiliar with many of these common viruses, such as the flu, the common cold, COVID-19, and so on. Quote, "Hands down, the number one predisposition for having more than one virus at a time is your age, and it's really children under 5, said Dr. Esper, continuing on. "They all have the virus running rampant and swap them like trading cards," end closed quote. Cold viruses make up the most commonly seen co-infection cases, Esper said, whereas co-infections with influenza are observed less frequently. Quote, "There are certain pathogens that don't like to dance with anyone, and influenza is one of them," he said, continuing on. "When the body gets infected with the flu virus, it really starts flooding the whole system with a lot of immune components that prevent viral infection," end closed quote, making it harder for pathogens to enter the body and cause illnesses. Texas Children's Hospital said it diagnosed more than 90 flu cases since Thanksgiving. Meanwhile, COVID-19 cases continue to double due to the Omicron variant. Quote, "During the weekend, we shattered prior records that were established during the Delta surge in August," said Dr. Verslovich, continuing on. "Just in a span of 2 to 3 weeks, we saw the tremendous impact of Omicron overtaking Delta," end closed quote. It's still unclear if quote-unquote flu-rona cases cause more severe disease, but health experts don't want to take any chances. They urge Americans to get vaccinated against both the COVID-19 virus as well as the seasonal flu this year. The flu vaccine is available to children over 6 months of age, and the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine is available to children 5 and older. Quote, "Influenza vaccination is the best preventative measure against getting infected and preventing some of the serious influenza-associated complications," said Dr. Greg Sylvester, Chief Medical Officer at Seqirus, an influenza vaccine manufacturer based out of North Carolina. That full article from the Detroit Free Press on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Also making headlines yesterday, Governor Whitmer's husband, Dr. Mark Mallory, has tested positive for COVID-19, and the governor is isolating pending her test results. Governor Whitmer is awaiting that test result after her husband, the first gentleman, Mark Mallory, earlier on Tuesday, tested positive for the virus. Governor Whitmer's office said Mallory tested positive for the virus, quote, after feeling under the weather, and closed quote. Whitmer tested negative for the virus after taking a rapid test, but is awaiting the results of her PCR test. Quote, like so many families around the country, the governor and her husband took extra precautions to limit contact with others to stay safe during the holidays as they celebrated Christmas with their immediate family members in Michigan, and closed quote, said Bobby Letty, a spokesperson for Governor Whitmer. Letty continued on, quote, thankfully the entire family is vaccinated and boosted, so the governor has not tested positive and is not experiencing symptoms, and close quote. Whitmer is isolating in a separate area of the governor's Lansing home until her PCR test results come back, said Letty, and is also working to communicate with all of those whom she's recently come into contact with as a result of the holiday, as well as work conditions as well. Governor Whitmer's office said that she continues to work to increase testing access, encouraging vaccination and masks, and securing treatments like monoclonal antibodies when applicable. In recent days, Governor Whitmer had no publicly disclosed events. She is scheduled she is scheduled to give the State of the State address in the coming weeks. While no firm date has been announced, the annual address usually occurs in late January. Mark Mallory's diagnosis comes roughly a month after Michigan officials identified the first case of the highly contagious Omicron variant as Michigan continues to surge in new COVID-19 cases. On Monday, the state reported a 7-day average of 12,247 new cases per day over 5 days. The same day, the health department reported 3,903 adults hospitalized with confirmed cases of COVID in Michigan, a slight uptick from weeks past, but still down from the record of 4,518 that were hospitalized on December 13th. You can read that full article as well as updates as they come in throughout the week from the Detroit News by clicking on the link on our website at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Lastly, a great article from Bridge, Michigan, posted late yesterday. Can at-home COVID tests be trusted with Omicron? There are limitations. Early research indicates rapid antigen COVID tests, the at-home tests relied on by millions of Michiganders, aren't as sensitive to detecting the Omicron variant as they were to previous variants of COVID-19. While these tests are still considered useful, it is a problem that could give some students and workers a false sense of security as they return to classrooms and offices following the holiday, said Nick Decker, Director of Laboratory Services at Memorial Healthcare in Owasso. With more people getting tested for COVID and more riding on the outcome, even a small uptick in false negative tests can create big public health problems, he said, saying, quote, if we're running 1 million tests a day, false results may be, quote, a bigger number, and closed quote. It's tough to know how many antigen tests are given each day in the state. While they are given in hospitals and clinics, they are also sold at drugstores and markets for people swabbing at home, with most results never reported to the state. In the middle of the holidays last week, many may have missed the announcement by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration that Omicron is evading detection in some antigen tests more often than earlier COVID-19 virus variants. It's just one more frustration for Michiganders trying to make decisions as COVID case rates skyrocketed and rise to unprecedented levels in Michigan. Businesses struggle to maintain staff, and schools scramble to make sense of what seems like ever-changing guidelines. While false negatives are drawing much of the concern, rapid antigen tests may be spitting out false positives as well, a result of user error or, in rare cases, even the common cold caused by a seasonal, less dangerous coronavirus, some lab leaders told Bridge, Michigan. Quote, that's not super common, said Robert Tibbetts, Associate Director of Microbiology Labs at Detroit-based Henry Ford Health System. Still, he said, some antigen tests may, quote, cross-react with other coronaviruses or any other viruses for that matter, end closed quote. A false positive can take students out of class or workers off production lines or out of restaurant kitchens and offices while they're actually healthy. Just a few weeks ago, About 10 to 30 staff a day tested positive for COVID at Grand Rapids-based 14 hospital Spectrum Health. This week, there are, quote, 60 to 90 a day, said Chad Tuttle, Senior Vice President of Spectrum Health West Michigan, which represents 11 of those hospitals. Last week, 615 workers were essentially off work after testing positive among a workforce of approximately 31,000 people. Certainly, COVID-19 tests have never been perfect, and some antigen tests are cheaper, faster, and less reliable than the gold standard, which is PCR tests. And there has long been a problem with people testing too early or, quote, panic testing after an exposure, which leads to false negatives. A PCR test is more sensitive than the antigen tests, but also more expensive, about $100 or more each, said Memorial's Decker. That's compared to $25 or less for a pack of 2 at-home antigen tests. PCR tests are nearly always administered by a medical professional and read in a lab. And when labs receive a heavy crush of tests to evaluate, results of a PCR test may not be available for multiple days. Meanwhile, millions of free at-home tests are expected to head to Michigan next month under a federal effort announced just before Christmas to limit Omicron-fueled wildfire spread of COVID-19. You can read that full article with more details on the differences between those antigen tests and the PCR tests, their effectiveness in detecting the Omicron variant in particular, but COVID-19 in general as well, and other information about when you should get tested and which tests you should probably get depending on your circumstances. That full article from Bridge, Michigan, as well as all of our other top stories today on our website at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. We have a good show ahead of you today. Coming up next, I'll speak with Carrie Sochet. She is the founder of Purple Squirrel Advisors. She'll talk a little bit about how she's helping companies that are trying to fill staffing positions at this point in the pandemic. At the bottom of the 10 o'clock hour, the president of the National Council of Jewish Women of Michigan, Amy Cutler, will join me on the show. At the top of the 11 o'clock hour, Dr. Elizabeth Boulat from Henry Ford Maple Grove Center will talk to us about how addiction, particularly reliance on alcohol, has seen an uptick over the course of the pandemic. At 11:20, Cindy Eggleton, the CEO of Brilliant Detroit, will join us, and we'll cap off the show at 11:40 with Rebecca Salminen Witt, Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer at the Detroit Historical Museum. That's all coming up next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM. Joining us now is the founder and president of Purple Squirrel Advisors, Carrie Sochet. It's a recruiting agency that places management, executives, and C-level roles in finance and accounting, as well as working in operations, human resources, sales, and marketing. Carrie, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. So let's start with you have a really interesting name for your business, Purple Squirrel Advisors. Tell us about the origin story behind that name.
Sure. So Purple Squirrel is a recruiting industry term referring to the unicorn or the elusive perfect candidate. And so it's widely used by recruiters. I've been using it, that term for many years. I was with a global recruiting firm in Chicago for about 10 years and moved back to Detroit in late 2012. When I moved back, I realized it would be very hard, and I decided to leave the global firm and really start my entrepreneurial journey at that time. I realized it would be hard to compete with the national firms for kind of those premium searches or those kind of easier ones. And so out of the gates, I decided that I would kind of go purple squirrel hunting. So looking for the more traditional purple squirrels, which are highly technical roles. They're in rural markets. There's something that makes them challenging. And so that's what I did for my first couple of years in Michigan, and then came to believe that every search is the search for a purple squirrel if you're really trying to get it right, and get those things that you can't see on paper that make for a good fit. And so that's how we just define the purple squirrel today.
So when you're working with companies in their hiring processes or as they're looking to reorganize their management, what are some of the ways that your company, that Purple Squirrel Advisors, is is working with these companies? Are you working more with the executives, more with the HR departments, a little bit of both?
Yeah, it really depends on kind of the business itself and what their management team structure is. Oftentimes, we're working with owners and CEOs. If they have an HR department, we certainly collaborate with them as well. And so it just varies company to company. Most of our clients are small to mid-sized businesses. And so, their structures vary. But, we help them with everything. Really, it's not just candidates we bring, it's process as well. And, and oftentimes our clients don't have fully scoped out job descriptions. And so we'll help them to, scope the roles, write those position specifications, and just bring different things to their attention even before we get started on the actual recruiting. And then, of course, we guide them through the recruiting process as well.
We're joined by Carrie Chauchet. She is the founder and president of Purple Squirrel Advisors, joining us today on the Megacast. And so we've seen over the past year or so, as things have started to reopen, this quote-unquote worker shortage that's been affecting businesses that are looking to reacclimate their workforce to life as we currently know it. We're looking to bring some employees back off of their leave, off of their furloughs, or just hire more people. How has that affected your role and your company's role in recruiting some of these employees and helping these businesses find those perfect candidates to fill these roles, and at the very least, people that do want to fill these roles?
Sure. Yeah, no, the last year has definitely been a year of learning, I think, for many of us who are in these roles of trying to hire people. And there's been, a lot of change, I think, across the board with expectations on both sides of the table. And there's been a lot of, specifically in the roles that we fill, there's been a lot of early retirements. And so that's, so we've done a lot of succession hiring and succession placements. But I think it's also just the navigating those changing expectations. A couple of years ago, you really wouldn't need to worry about whether workers would go into an office. And now, on our first phone calls, we have to ask the candidates, are you, this is we have to discuss whether it's an in-person, a hybrid, or a fully remote role. And those, depending on what it is, you can eliminate a large group of candidates based on, especially if it's fully in person with certain levels of candidates, that makes it more challenging. We also have to cover, vaccine policies and different things that are really new for 2021. These are not things that we had to worry about in an interview process prior to 2021. So just helping to just work through some of those topics with our clients.
So as companies have been navigating their troubles hiring over the last several months, in terms of their approach, have they had to change their approach from trying to find that perfect candidate to finding whoever they can in some way or another to fill those roles, or some sort of balance in between, maybe even hiring someone into a position like that on a temporary or a contract basis, hoping that things change down the line and they'll be able to eventually get that perfect candidate in their long term? Or have they been more focused on just filling the position, and if they need to bring this candidate along a little further to be at their ideal proficiency for that position, that's something that they've been more adaptable in terms of how they are, how willing they are to bring someone in that maybe isn't fully the greatest candidate or entirely ready for that position at that time?
Yeah, so with the positions that we're filling, being mostly, leadership roles, we're not finding, we're able to bring, fully qualified candidates and candidates that are, we'll keep working at it until everybody feels there's a good fit. We're not finding a lot of interest in, I guess, what quote unquote settling for the positions that we're hiring for. But I certainly think that companies have had to maybe adjust their expectations for different levels of hiring, and, really, figuring out, what are the minimum skill sets that we need for this role, and maybe, working towards hiring at that level versus, again, to your point, the ideal candidate across the board. So, I think would absolutely vary depending on the level of position the company is trying to hire for in terms of whether they would adjust their expectations. The other challenge that many companies are facing is the rising wages. And, certainly we've seen some rising wages even in the mid-level and senior level positions we're filling. And so then it's up to us to kind of advise and work with our clients on, hey, these are the candidates that we're finding in the salary range. If you really want to get, your list of 10 or 15 requirements, we're going to maybe have to adjust the salary range for the role. And so we'll have those types of conversations. But I know that even at, earlier career positions or other labor type roles, I know that a lot of our clients are facing rising wages. And so they're having to adjust their expectations based on that.
We're joined by Carrie Shochet. She's the founder and president of Purple Squirrel Advisors with us today on the Megacast. And Carrie, there are a lot of factors that have gone into the worker shortages, so to speak, and have gone into what's being called the Great Resignation of 2021. Being someone that is in some ways in a mediary position between companies that are looking to hire candidates or companies that are losing employees and those employees that are looking for these jobs or are leaving these jobs, what are some of your opinions on the causes of this quote-unquote Great Resignation in 2021, and how has your company been advising other businesses to navigate this landscape that they're in right now to prevent people from wanting to leave their company and instead enticing them to want to stay long-term?
Sure. Yeah, so it was interesting. I heard a statement or a quote from in another interview recently where they said that the Great Resignation is not a trend, it's a movement. And so I think that, what's led to the Great Resignation is really a lot of the workforce rethinking their priorities and thinking about what's important and adjusting those priorities, in terms of work-life balance and some other things. So, there have been early retirements. There have been people that are just making entire career changes. There's just a lot of factors that go into it. On the other side of that, though, the retention piece, I think, really having open dialogue with the employees, discussing career paths. So that's one thing that's really big with, especially I would say early to mid-career employees, is they really, they want to know, where they're heading with the company. And so having those active discussions on career opportunities and career paths, learning and training, providing those opportunities within the company to continue to develop those employees and grow their skill sets. There's also a trend where employees want to feel that they're part of more of a mission-based business. There's something deeper. It's not just about profits. It's about, there's some other component of their job or their company that's providing value to the community. And so tying whatever it is that the company does to some bigger mission, I think has been an important piece of kind of what's important to people at this time. And just as one example, even if you're we've got a client who is a packaging company, but they use a lot of green processes and recycled materials. And so, while they're a manufacturer and they're a packager, their mission is to, really it's a green and an environmentally conscious type of product that they have. And so, trying to find candidates that would be attracted to that mission is big as well. So those are just a few of the things, and then I think just really listening to the employees and providing them an opportunity to share, what's important to them.
So considering those factors, Carrie, what do you believe continues to be some of the reasons why, even in the case of companies that are providing some of those resources or are shifting their vision going forward and doing so to attract some of these employees that have not returned to the workforce, what do you believe are some of the contributing factors still to this day why we still are in a quote-unquote worker shortage, for lack of better terms?
Yeah, so some of that is hard to really understand. I recently did another interview, and it was kind of where are all the workers? And so I think there's still a question as to, why we have such a worker shortage. I think some of the resignation and quitting trends, though, are tied to another big thing, which is burnout. And so I think there's, because of some of these shortages and open positions that creates pressure and additional workload on the employees that are there at the business. And so I think the burnout issue is one to watch and kind of, again, be aware of, and figuring out ways to reduce burnout is very important on the retention side. But in terms of, the worker shortage, I think there's a few things that have gone into that. It's, again, the early retirements. I think there's some dual income families that potentially decided, to go to single income and have one of the family members, stay at home, with the kids, or something along those lines. I think the gig workers, that's been a big one, where there's, a lot of millennial talent. They're choosing to have more control over their destiny and their day through taking on special projects and things through the various sites that you can find that work. So those are just a few things that I think are contributing to that shortage.
So with that willingness to hold short of accepting a job or even accepting an interview for so many of those that are out of the workforce right now, how has that changed the dynamic in your role, in your company's role, helping as a recruiter and as and helping these companies in their hiring process? How's that changed your role or your approach to negotiating with these or finding these qualified candidates for these jobs?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot more, the candidates candidates are being bombarded, or potential employees or potential candidates are being bombarded, I think, with recruitment attempts. And so, we've continued to look at, how are we messaging? How are we positioning our clients' opportunities? We're looking at other creative strategies to reach the candidates and make our opportunities stand out. And as one example, we've started filming, videos that are 60 seconds or under, and sending those videos to the candidate as opposed to just a written message, and saying, really describing the opportunity via video, because there's a lot of people, video is the way to reach, certain demographics of talent. And so we're trying different strategies just to stand out. And really it takes a lot of, like, what I would call pinpoint recruiting. You can't post an ad and expect that you're going to get applicants at all, or even, more specifically, the qualified applicants that you're seeking. And so it really does take that more proactive approach.
We're joined by Carrie Chauchet. She is the founder and president of Purple Squirrel Advisors, joining us on the Megacast. And so, Carrie, looking forward to 2022, what are the job market prospects looking like in that year? And as of now, what projections are there maybe for how the current dynamic in the job market may change or may fluctuate as we head into the new year?
It's so hard to say what's going to happen. I mean, we're expecting a very strong Q1. We've received probably more new search inquiries over the last couple of weeks than would be the norm at this time of year. There's, sometimes there's a cyclicality to recruiting, and we have not seen that cyclicality in 2021. We've seen an ongoing high level of demand for our services. And so I expect, January to be very busy. I don't expect a significant change in some of these trends, at least in Q1, just with what we're seeing. It's just so hard to say, though. There's factors that are, like more macroeconomic type factors that, could impact the job market, but I just don't see anything specific that's going to change these trends at the moment.
And in terms of specific industries or specific jobs, what are some job openings or particular industries that are trending upwards in terms of available positions, or at least a position, or even positions that are filling up quickly if people are looking to get into a new job?
Yeah, so kind of in line with some of the challenges in the overall kind of business community. So we've seen an uptick in HR searches. There's because of these labor challenges and challenges with talent, management and those types of issues. We've seen an increase in strategic HR positions. So that's been a big one. We continue to see a lot of demand for strong financial professionals and financial leadership, so controller and CFOs. But that's been an area that's been, hot for us. I would say across the board, though, public accounting talent. So, ranging from staff to manager level positions within public accounting on both tax and audit. Across the board, there's intense competition for that talent. So, there's a lot of demand for supply chain talent with some of those challenges that companies are experiencing in the supply chain side. So those are just a few things that we're seeing.
Well, Carrie, we appreciate your time. Another couple minutes with you before we'll say goodbye. Anything else that we haven't discussed today that you'd like to talk about, or anything that would be important for our audience to keep in consideration as they're looking into the job market, either for their own business to hire some employees, or if they're an employee, a worker out there in the workforce that's looking to rejoin a new company?
Sure. Yeah, so I guess a couple of things I would point out. If somebody listening is on the hiring side of the table, I think there's a huge opportunity with bringing formerly working parents back into the workplace, working parents back or stay-at-home parents back into the workplace. And so I think there's a lot of talent out there that would come back into the workplace if the right situation or flexibility was offered to them. And so I think that's an option to consider. So for example, providing that person an opportunity to maybe have a more flexible schedule so that they can do pickups and drop-offs with their kids. That's just one tip on a way to potentially attract some great talent. And run a great process on the hiring side. So make it smooth, keep your steps consistent across the board, but keep things moving and maintain that momentum. And when you have a great candidate, I would say come in strong with the first offer. On the candidate side, a couple of tips would be you can really stand out right now if you have the right message for a potential opportunity. So if you're looking to make a career change, I would recommend having a short cover letter or reaching out to somebody at the company and explaining to them how you think your current skill set will transition well into this new role. And I would say, as always, write a thank you email and send that promptly when you complete an interview, because that demonstration of interest and that follow-up is very important and can make you stand out as a top candidate. So those are just a couple tips that come to mind.
Carrie, thank you very much for joining us and giving us some insight into the job market as we put an end to 2021. Look forward to 2022.
Thank you so much for having me.
We as Michiganders feel connected to this resource in a way that I think is really powerful.
Conservation starts with a caring, committed community.
For me, it's peaceful to have a relationship with the river.
Every single one of us has a role to make sure that those waterways stay safe and healthy, being careful about what goes down the storm drain.
Just even eliminating some of your single-use plastic makes a difference.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Did you know that nearly 3.31 million Americans don't get their annual checkup? Going to the doctor regularly is extremely important and is a crucial factor in maintaining good health. Make sure you are visiting your local doctor often and telling them about any health concerns you have. For more information, contact your local healthcare provider. This message is brought to you by WBHS Digital Media Arts Program and 89.3 Lakes FM.
Achoo!
People are getting out to walk and bike in higher numbers. More vulnerable road users and higher speed traffic can be a dangerous combination. Crash severity has increased, so if you're driving, be sure to slow down and look for people. There's no need to speed. If you're biking, ride with traffic. If you're walking, avoid stepping into the road if possible. If you have to walk in the street, walk facing traffic. Learn more at walkbikedrivesafe.org.
When times get dark, We can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
211, how can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources, call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keith. You can learn more about everywhere that we broadcast and find all of our full shows and individual interviews on demand on our website at civiccentertv.com by clicking on our Megacast page. And that's where you'll also be able to learn more information about everywhere that we broadcast each and every day live from 10 a.m. to 12 noon, as well as throughout the day for replays and live to tape on many different community television and radio stations here in Oakland County and all throughout the state of Michigan on our website at civiccentertv.com, as well as on My Michigan TV. Joining us now is Amy Cutler. She is the president of the National Council of Jewish Women of Michigan, with us on the Megacast. Amy, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. I'm thrilled to be here.
Appreciate having you on. So for those that aren't familiar with the National Council of Jewish Women of Michigan, can you tell us about the history of the organization and some of the goals of the organization as well?
Well, we are an organization that is actually 130 years old in Michigan, and it was started in, I believe, I'm going to get the numbers wrong. But at any rate, we have been around for a long time. We are a grassroots organization, and we volunteer for social justice. We are a social justice organization, and we advocate for families, women, children. We look for those programs and projects that we can make a difference. We were founded in 1891, I believe. Let me get that number correct. And inspired by Jewish values. And we've maintained a progressive stance on issues at local, state, and national levels. So we are a 501c3 organization. And as such, we cannot advocate for any particular political figure, but we certainly can advocate for issues that are of concern to us for the mission of our supporters, for the mission of our program.
So as you mentioned, you lobby in Lansing for certain certain issues that are affecting Michiganders here in our state, but not for specific candidates. So when you do go to Lansing and you are, or to other places throughout the state of Michigan, and you are lobbying in favor or against certain decisions or lobbying on certain issues, what sort of issues are some of those that are commonly spoken on by your organization and its members? And do you have any trips planned so far this year?
Unfortunately, with what's happening with this coronavirus business, we don't have any trips planned, but we have had several in the past. We also lobby in Washington, and we do have a Washington Institute scheduled for May. However, again, we're not sure this is going to take place because of what is happening, again, with this pandemic. But we have a very, very active and robust group, Advocacy for Advocacy and Elections. And they were very instrumental and they still are working for, we know that redistricting is one of our big issues here in Michigan and around the country. So we have a group working on that for lobbying. We have voter rights issues that we lobby for. We are a pro-choice organization, and we advocate for a woman's right to choose. Courts matter is one of our big issues as well, very important as far as what we feel our advocates are committed to social justice and any call for action that would make this world a better place to live in.
We're joined by Amy Cutler. She is the president of the National Council of Jewish Women of Michigan, joining us today on the Megacast. And so, Amy, can you talk a little bit about Council Resale that's located on 12 Mile Road in Berkeley? You also have an association with that, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, because we are a giving organization and we continue to want to help communities, even though Kentucky is a little bit far away from us, this is not our immediate community, it's still one of our community of human beings, if you will. And our hearts go out to all of those that suffered such terrible loss of life and devastation due to the weather. And it was just, it's a terrible thing to watch people lose everything they have in these towns, especially just flattened to nothing. So we wanted to start the year by helping the many thousands of victims with donations that are in such great need. So we came upon this, that we will, 10% of our sales at the Berkeley store, at our resale store, will go towards helping these communities. And the store is open. It's in Berkeley on 12 Mile at 3297 West 12 Mile. The hours are 10 to 6, Monday through Saturday. And the donations of clothing, currently we do not take children's clothing or books. We just don't have the room for that. They're accepted. And hopefully we will be able to help these communities as much as we can.
We're joined by Amy Cutler, the president of the National Council of Jewish Women of Michigan, joining us today on the Megacast. And so what are some of the common kinds of items that people can find at Council Resale if they're looking to go there over the next several days and support this effort with the fact that some of those proceeds are going to help these people that fell victim to these natural disasters?
I'm glad you asked that. We consider the store kind of a mini department store. We have many, many different departments. We have an upscale department with beautiful furs, and these are they're not cheap. There are furs anywhere from a couple $100 to a couple $1,000, but they are magnificent mink coats and so on. But certainly much cheaper than you would find in a Furrier's, at a Furrier's or a department store. The upscale department also has beautiful gowns. We do have wedding gowns. We have mother of the bride gowns, bridesmaids, and evening gowns. Beautiful shoe department. Sometimes, and I'm guilty of it as well, sometimes you buy a pair of shoes and you realize you wear it once and not quite what I wanted, or it doesn't feel right. So we have a beautiful shoe department. We have a huge men's clothing department, beautiful suits. And I must stress that anything that is not, I hate to say it, but not something that I would wear or something that maybe I would want to give my family to wear, we don't accept that. I shouldn't say that. We don't sell that. Mm-hmm. We do accept everything. And we do have a salvage. So we that's a very important part of the store as well, because salvage will give us money for our costs and so on. But our clothes are beautiful, and some of them you would never know that they actually have been, used, or they come from somewhere. Some of them still have price tags on them, believe it or not. That many we buy, and sometimes we look at something and say, really didn't want to buy it. And we have a lot of people who give their donations very generously. We have a home goods area where we have some china, we have silverware, we have china, we have beautiful artwork. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are downsizing, so they have donated, practically their entire collection of artwork to our store. Sometimes you have several sets of dishes. We have a lot of china, sets of china. We have vases and different, how should I say, unique. Well, we do have some antiques that people have collected over the years. We do not accept children's clothes, so we don't have a children's department. I think that pretty much says, but a lot of clothes that actually, we have a huge blue jean department. Many people do sell their blue, recycle their jeans. Sure. But anyway, it's worth taking a look at. A lot of jewelry. We have a huge showcase of jewelry.
We're joined by Amy Cutler. She is the president of the National Council of Jewish Women of Michigan, joining us on the Megacast. And so, as you said, council resale now through this weekend, a portion of the proceeds from all sales will be going to help provide funds to those that were affected by the tornadoes in Kentucky. What was the inspiration? Obviously, you want to help people that have fallen victim to a horrible natural disaster. But what was the inspiration specifically in this case to say we're going to put together a fundraiser using our proceeds specifically to help people that fell victim to this disaster?
I don't know if there could be one inspiration, but I am so proud to be part of this organization. Whenever we see a need, we always say, why not? Let's do it. Let's do something to help. Some of our other programs as well, if I may mention them, we have a back-to-school store where we clothe. I shouldn't say that we take, we used to, of course, with COVID now, we haven't been able to do this. The back to school store, we take 900 students. We have a pop-up store and they come and they do a little shopping. Everything is donated. Clothes, coats, hats, gloves, shirts, sweatshirts. Many times we have shoes. This year, of course, we couldn't. But we have agencies around the city of Detroit where our students come and they are able to shop so that they can get ready for school. We have a backpack project. We have, believe it or not, in Oakland County, there are some 5,000 students who are homeless, either in shelters or at the orchards or whatever. We collect backpacks. We don't collect, we purchase actually these backpacks. And this is the way the kids can start school because they are unable to purchase their own backpacks. We have adult guardianship where we visit those seniors who are in residences who don't have anyone that can be with them. And this is, of course, through the Oakland County's probate court, the courts of Oakland County. We are doing our very best with Kosher Meals on Wheels. We service about 150 recipients of Kosher Meals on Wheels who are unable to provide for their own for their own food. And our packers are at the Jewish Community Center here in West Bloomfield every morning at 6 o'clock packing food so that these people, they will have their proper meals. So this organization is a service organization, and this is just what we do. So we are always inspired. We are always out there. We are always looking at the communities and how can we help? This is what we do.
We're joined by Amy Cutler. She is the president of the National Council of Jewish Women of Michigan, joining us on the Megacast. And so, as you mentioned, you do a lot of advocacy work for children. Your organization does as well. And so your organization actually has some events coming up as we begin this year to benefit the youth. A couple of those events include the Youth Video Contest and the Jewish Youth Awards of 2022. Can you tell us a little bit about both of those events and how people and kids adults and kids can participate?
Correct. The Jewish Youth Awards actually is ongoing now, has started now, and we encourage this again is as I said, the Jewish Youth Awards. This is funded by the Katz family and by the Brodsky. I'm going to get this right. Excuse me. I do not want to get that wrong.
That's okay.
The Katz family and the Brodsky family, I believe. At any rate, the students write an essay of what influenced them in their life, and they are awarded a first, second. We have a first, second, third prize and some honorable mention. But these funds help them in their college pursuits, and that the Jewish Youth Awards are ongoing now. Also, the video contest is one that is taking place now as well. We haven't come out with our promotion for that, but this year we are looking at bullying. And of course, we are so, everyone has been really touched by the Oxford tragedy, the Oxford High School tragedy. So the contest this year is for high school seniors to do a video, kind of a PSA, to promote. Well, I think the question is, how can you be an upstander and this is the upstander is the quote that we got from a high school teacher, but this is what the students are using in the face of bullying, and how can you improve and help the community? And I can't remember the exact wording of what the video contest is, of what the question is for the video contest. But again, this is another scholarship, another award that they will be receiving.
Well, Amy, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. Any other things we should be keeping in mind, or we should be keeping a lookout for with your organization in the near future?
Well, we do also sponsor an all-kids playground, which happens to be in Waterford, and it is an all-access playground, which we are always looking for funds to keep that up. And this is one of those playgrounds where anyone can come, especially those children who are have certain physical disabilities. And this All Kids Playground is one of our special projects as well. We also are very involved with literacy outreach. We have tutors that go to actually Coleman Young Elementary School in Detroit to tutor children. And of course, again, with COVID, we haven't been able to do it this year, but we are constantly looking to keep that program up. There are just so many ways that we can help our community, and we are always looking for people to join us. And I would say, if there is anyone who is out there who would like to join us or would like to help us in our efforts, please go to our website at www.ncjwmi.org, or at Council Resale if you want to bring in your donations, and that's www.councilresale.net, or call 248-548-6664, or our offices at Council. So we are always looking for anyone who is willing to come on this wonderful journey with us.
Well, Amy, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
You're welcome. You can learn more information on their website at ncjwmi.org. That is ncjwmi.org. They also have a link there to Council Resale's website, which is also councilresale.net. Also on the website at ncjwmi.org. You'll find more information about how you can volunteer with the organization, other events that they have coming up. I'll take a look at their calendar, ways that you can support the organization. You can sign up for their e-newsletter as well to keep up to date on everything that has to do with the National Council of Jewish Women, Michigan. We're going to take a quick break here on your radio homes for the Megacast, 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake and 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. Coming up next, we'll head over to Henry Ford Maple Grove Center to talk about addiction, particularly alcohol reliance during the pandemic and how COVID-19 and certain addictions and many different forms of addictions have been related over the last couple of years. Dr. Elizabeth Boulat from Henry Ford Maple Grove Center will join us next on today's edition of the Megacast.
Parents do a lot of worrying. Get your kids caught up on childhood vaccines to protect them from these 14 preventable diseases, and you'll have 14 fewer things to worry about. Vaccines are safe and effective and save lives. So let's get caught up on vaccines and worry about something else. Get the facts at ivaccinate.org.
We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Most of the pollution that goes into our rivers is carried by rainwater that flows off of roads, parking lots, and rooftops.
The leaves and bark of a single tree can retain a surprising amount of rainwater. Depending on its size and species, it could be 100 gallons or more.
It is estimated that an urban forest can reduce annual runoff by up to 7%.
Here's one thing that we know can help keep our water clean.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Joining us now from Henry Ford Maple Grove Center is their Medical Director of Addiction Medicine, Dr. Elizabeth Boulat. Joining us on the Megacast. Doctor, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. So during the pandemic, we've seen a rise in alcohol use, and we've seen a rise also in alcohol abuse as well. And it's particularly, these numbers have been staggering among women, especially moms. Just how much of a change from pre-pandemic to during pandemic and in the present right now have those instances changed?
Yeah, so I think traditionally we've seen usage in both male and females. I think what we've noticed, it's become more apparent, and women are seeking treatment for alcohol use disorder. Pre-pandemic, typically we would see alcohol usage higher on the end with male consumption. Really what COVID did is it caused a lot of isolation, anxiety, stress, unknown circumstances, financial stressors. I think where women were impacted was a lot of women that were at home with children, homeschooling, sort of turned to that as a coping mechanism. And there's been some studies quoting up to 300% increase in women drinking alcohol. So there's one piece of it, which is the increased consumption, and the other is whether there's an actual, we would call an alcohol use disorder. But either way, it's staggering the numbers.
And so why has there, to your knowledge and to other experts in medicine that are focusing on addiction medicine in particular, why do you believe that there's been this increase during the pandemic in alcohol use and misuse, particularly among these women who are moms, but really in women in general?
Yeah. So, and it could be men as well. I think the person that stays at home, so I think traditionally there's been the sort of role with women. We've seen, COVID provided a lot of unknown and anxiety. And if somebody already has a tendency to be depressed or anxious and did not have proper treatment, as well as if someone's, struggling with insomnia, COVID brought a lot of, everybody sort of felt unsure. And I think it became a coping mechanism. In terms of the homeschooling or people being at home more often, this also happened for people working remotely. We saw an increased usage. Isolation is the worst thing for addiction. And what did COVID do for everybody? It isolated everybody. So if you're already prone to isolating and using substances and using them as a coping mechanism, so in this case, women are at home all day, let's say homeschooling children by themselves, there's no accountability. So suddenly my one glass of wine at night has become a glass in the morning, maybe a glass with lunch, and you can see how that can escalate. Really, a lot of it is coping mechanisms. We're, an opportunity here, and I think that's where the alcohol turned.
So just for reference, doctor, what is a healthy amount of alcohol consumption both for women and for others, just that we have this reference to go off of as we approach consideration of the increased use of alcohol during the pandemic?
Yeah, so, with women and men, there's different criteria. And then with people over the age of 65, that also follows the same criteria as women. But, 7 drinks a week or 14 for men. And that would be also 7 for somebody that's 65 and older. And then more than 3 drinks in one setting would be considered excessive. So there is moderate use. And there are people that can drink alcohol and that don't have a problem. What happened with COVID was the perfect storm. Again, there was a lot of depression, anxiety, self-medicating, isolation. I think the people that really struggled the most were those that were sort of escalating with their addiction, which is a progressive disease. I think what I found is people that were already in recovery actually did quite well. There's always challenges, but I think that in some ways, it could have helped people that were already sober. I think the people that were struggling, it made it much harder. Also, a lot of facilities were closed or in less capacity. So access to treatment was even an issue.
So, and as we talk about access to treatment, how does access to alcohol, to purchasing of alcohol, unlike other substances that are so often abused, how does that play a factor, especially during the pandemic, in the increase in these numbers?
Yeah, well, with delivery apps, which many of us use for groceries and and for food, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, alcohol is also something that can be delivered, and I think access to that would be basically nonstop. And we live in a state where there's alcohol pretty much on every corner at every convenience store. It's pretty accessible. So while other drugs of abuse can be attainable, certainly alcohol is much easier. And so for somebody who has an alcohol use disorder, it definitely makes it more challenging. So access is definitely much easier, and it became much easier during this time.
And so what are some of the physical or the mental health issues that might arise in someone that has increased their use of alcohol or maybe abusing or misusing alcohol?
Yeah, so we have what we would kind of call safe or moderate drinking, or people that do not have an alcohol use disorder. I want to make it kind of clear that if somebody does have an addiction, they can't drink at all. So there's not, I can have 1 or 2. So it's sort of 0 or nothing. So in terms of kind of the effects, if you're a binge drinker, so somebody who typically drinks heavily on the weekends, that actually is pretty detrimental to the body as well. We look at liver, heart, these things can get escalate high blood pressure, high cholesterol, something called alcoholic hepatitis, which is inflammation of the liver. Of course, on the mental health side of things, other than the intoxication dangers, which can be deadly, there's also, respiratory depression, which is slow breathing, kind of ataxia when people are kind of not able to walk, in a straight line. But the higher your blood alcohol, it really can be deadly. And for folks that drink daily and have physiological dependence, this is something now that if you want to stop, it's dangerous. And that's another important thing. We always think of alcohol as sort of this legal and it's not so dangerous, but alcohol withdrawal is one of the most deadly things that substances you can come off of. So seizures, withdrawal in itself causes kind of your body to go into overdrive. So if somebody has underlying health issues, I think also can cause anxiety, insomnia, depression. So mental health and physical health can be affected whether you're drinking daily or heavy binge drinking, but definitely we know that it's not good for the body.
We're joined by Dr. Elizabeth Bulot from Henry Ford Maple Grove Center. She's their medical director of addiction medicine with us today on the Megacast. And so you mentioned the impact that isolation has had on the increased use and misuse of alcohol during the pandemic at this time of the year, and given the circumstances we're currently under regarding COVID-19, we're expecting to see more families get back to gathering together, groups of friends gathering together, whatever the case may be, for the Christmas holiday later on this week, for the New Year holiday next week as well. And so that would mean that in many of these cases, I would presume those that have been increasing their use of alcohol, have been misusing or abusing alcohol during the pandemic while they've been in those situations of isolation. They're going to be more visible with other people in their lives. What signs should people be looking out for in their friends and their family and other loved ones or acquaintances during this time of the year that may point to signs that they may be misusing or abusing alcohol?
Yeah, sure. No, it's a good point. I think, the isolation will be less during this time. And, we are in a very unique time with COVID and really have to be mindful of that as well with gathering. But, in terms of the alcohol, it's typically going to be, somebody that has changed their behavior. They may become, maybe more anxious, trying to isolate, trying to sort of sneak away. Really continued use despite negative consequences is sort of the biggest red flag. But if somebody's starting to, spend less time with the family or not show up to work or not fulfill their household duties, in terms of engaging with somebody, you may notice that physically they look different. Alcohol can do quite a bit on the body, whether it's, again, daily or binge drinking. If you notice bruises on their body, if it's somebody that may be falling from being intoxicated, especially we see this with elderly patients. So these are kind of all of things that we can start to see. Of course, tolerance. So if you see somebody that suddenly can drink quite a bit, and before you knew them as somebody that wasn't able to drink very much, we call that tolerance. That could be a sign of drinking more. So these are all sort of, erratic behavior, anxiety, things that can kind of be a good first step. I think the most important thing is that if, there is something that's identifiable, or if you have a concern about a family member, is just to really have a non-judgmental, open-ended conversation with them. This is a really hard time for everybody. It's been a long, year and a half for all of us. And I think, there's such a stigma with this, and there's a lot of shame and guilt. And so I think just having an open approach and really supporting people. Addiction is a family disease, and so family support is really key. And I think that's one of the most important things.
We're joined by Dr. Elizabeth Boulat. She is the Medical Director of Addiction Medicine at Henry Ford Maple Grove Center with us on the Megacast. And so we talked about recognizing those signs in a loved one or someone else in your life and addressing those issues. For someone that may themselves personally recognize that their alcohol intake has been abnormal, has been out of the ordinary, has escalated to a point that is at the point of misuse or abuse, and they want to seek treatment or they want to discontinue their alcohol use or abuse, what should they do in terms of seeking treatment? Because as you said, alcohol withdrawal from just straight cutting off all access to alcohol can be very dangerous. So what steps should they be taking?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is this somebody who's already developed what we would say an addiction or alcohol use disorder, or is this somebody that said, I've noticed I've been, hungover more, I'm calling into work. So I think the person that is physiologically dependent, so they drink every day, that is someone that should be under medical supervision. So I just really, the message is that, it can be very dangerous. And a lot of folks don't know that. And unfortunately, they end up having seizures and end up in the hospital. And so that's the challenge when you're finally ready to quit, you need help to do it. So for those folks, I would say, if you're not feeling well, always go to the emergency room. In terms of kind of first steps, talking to your primary care doctor is a good start. Typically, the conversation about, usages may have already occurred, but I think that's usually a good step. The primary care can then refer to addiction treatment if needed. The back of the insurance card has a substance abuse kind of number that can help people get access to treatment. For folks that are still sort of, maybe don't have an alcohol use disorder, but they're at risk for one, I think that's the time to really stay connected to your support. With COVID and the isolation, a lot of people got disconnected. And, as human beings, we enjoy having interaction. And a lot of that became isolating, especially for people like working from home or staying home and homeschooling, so there was really no interaction with other people. And so a lot of it just became, again, more isolative. So I think staying connected to support. The nice thing is, there's virtual FaceTime and things like that to be able to stay connected. Finding new coping mechanisms. I think that's a new one. I think a lot of folks that used to do group things now kind of had to reinvent. So an example would be exercising, taking walks, etc. So these are the couple few things. And in terms of support, Alcoholics Anonymous, or AA, does have virtual meetings, which has been really a lifesaver for many people. And so, one kind of silver lining out of all of this has been a lot of access to virtual care, which I think really has been helpful for people.
We're joined by Dr. Elizabeth Boulat. She is the Medical Director for Addiction Medicine at Henry Ford Maple Grove Center, joining us on the Megacast. And Doctor, we know the impact that the pandemic has had on alcohol intake, on alcohol use and misuse and abuse. What impact does the holidays typically have on those factors?
Yeah, it's definitely a time of vulnerability. If we sort of cut COVID out of the picture, I think for most people it can be a very joyous, time. I think for others it can be very stressful, especially if there's financial worries about presents and kind of making, the holidays special. I also have a lot of patients that unfortunately have lost loved ones during this pandemic, and so it's their first holiday without, maybe a family member or spouse. And so really we have to be mindful of how other people are going through things that we may not be aware of. But the holidays can be a challenge. I think if somebody is in recovery, a lot of times people have very transparent conversations. The family knows the person's in recovery and they're supportive of that. And so they might have a dry, holiday party where there's no alcohol. But I've also had some patients who, want to be able to have their family participate, but they have a safety plan where they go with somebody, that's supportive. And then if there's a point where they feel uncomfortable, they're able to leave. So I think in the beginning of recovery, we like to avoid these situations. But again, with the holidays, we have to do what's reasonable.
Doctor, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us today. Before we let you go, I want to give you another couple minutes in case there's anything that we haven't talked about today that people should be keeping in mind regarding alcohol use and misuse during the pandemic, or any other topics that you'd like to discuss.
Yeah, no, I think just, again, if someone is struggling or a family member is struggling, there is help available, whether it's in person, if somebody's afraid, because of the pandemic. I mean, there's a lot of virtual care options. And I think there's also a lot of medications that can help people, which many people don't know about, in terms of cravings or managing the sleep issues and anxiety, so that someone doesn't feel like they have to turn to alcohol.
Doctor, we appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Take care.
One of the things you can look for in your friends is a change in behavior. These can be big changes, they can be small changes in mood, physical appearance. They may be sleeping less or sleeping more, drinking more, or their eating patterns may be different. One big change that can be pretty obvious is change in motivation. Do they no longer want to play basketball? Do they no longer want to play video games? Now that we're spending more time online and in virtual settings, it's really important to pay attention to the language that your friend is using and the words they're using to communicate. So when we text our friends, are they taking longer amounts of time to respond? Are they not responding at all? You don't have to be an expert to try to recognize these signs. The second that you feel it in your gut and that you're concerned, that's a second to have the conversation and open the door to what might be going on.
Whatever gets you talking.
Today, it is easier than ever to join Michigan's Organ Donor Registry and help build a bridge of hope for organ, tissue, and eye donation. Just one person can potentially save or help improve the lives of up to 75 people. By joining, your legacy could be the gift of life. Sign up today at michigan.gov/SOS or at any of the more than 145 Secretary of State self-service stations located across Michigan. Be part of Michigan's Bridge of Hope by adding your name to the Organ Donor Registry.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources. Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keith. You can learn more information about everywhere that we broadcast and find all of our full interviews and full episodes as well on our website at civiccentertv.com/Megacast. Joining us now is Cindy Eggleton. She is the CEO of Brilliant Detroit, with us once again on the Megacast. Cindy, thank you for being with us.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. So for those that aren't familiar, they haven't seen you on our show before and heard us talk about these educational issues with you in the past. Tell us a little bit about your organization, about Brilliant Detroit.
Yeah, so Brilliant Detroit is an organization that we say we create kid success neighborhoods. Essentially, we take houses in the middle of the neighborhood and repurpose them into family centers where we provide education, health, and family support, what we call Belly to 8. By Kid Success Neighborhood, we're all in organizing the neighborhood along with the neighborhood to reach and achieve their goals so that a zip code does not predict a child's success. In the last 5.5 years, we have grown to serve over 8,000 people in 12 neighborhoods across the city. So we're in every part of Detroit, and it has been my honor to co-found this organization.
So over the course of the pandemic, the needs of children on the education front has changed drastically, especially of late, being that a lot of children were able to go back to in-person learning. Now there's some variation between some school districts being in person, some being virtual, others that have canceled classes to begin the year to decide to go one way or the other or set up one situation versus the other. How has that changed the approach that Brilliant Detroit has had to take to providing these services to these children?
Yeah, so I just want to say that for us, this has been a head, heart, and shoulders effort. Because we are so in the middle of the neighborhoods and work with so many kids and families, this is something that we have an enormous amount of responsibility for. And during this time, it's also been a fluid time because it is a chaotic period for families. That 1 week they're in school, 1 week they're not. They're doing virtual. What is happening and consistent for almost all kids is a need for recovery learning. And we see that really strongly in the work we do. We do a lot of after-school tutoring. In fact, about a year ago during the summertime, we did more tutoring than the public school did for kids to help with the recovery. Now, with that, there's good news. There's lots more volunteers, there's lots more kids, and there is help for kids and families. That's the good news. The sort of tougher news is that we need a lot of volunteers to get that work going for 2 hours a week, which is really kind of can be not a lot of time, but can be a big commitment. It is critically important that we do as much of that as humanly possible. We're doing other things during the pandemic to take care of social, emotional, et cetera. But I think there is nothing more critical as it relates to the education goals is to bolster and offset one-on-one with families and kids a tutoring device.
So as you had said, fortunately, with the changes that continue to happen because of the pandemic and within the pandemic's individual challenge, there has been a greater need for these services, and luckily you've been able to have a greater staffing of volunteers to be able to provide those services. So with that being the case, what are some of the more urgent needs at this time, both for the families but also for the organization, in order to maintain those relationships and continue to provide these services at high quality, especially given the uncertainty that we're dealing with?
Yeah, so just without question, we have grown during the pandemic 50%. We've actually, we're 50% of our size has grown during that time, so we've grown 100%. So that tells you that the need is extreme. So that's one need for us, is to continue to be able to grow in a way that is thoughtful so that we can serve families and kids. The second piece of it is tutoring. So when we are saying that on any particular semester we are tutoring 700 to 800 kids, we need that many tutors along with those kids. Those are big numbers. It is really an important thing that we work hard to continue to get more of those. We have a waiting list for kids right now and for tutors. The other thing that I think is sometimes forgotten is that we are all relationship-driven people. So how we do our tutoring, et cetera, is to build with different partners in this work relationships that are one-on-one and that can be fostered in those ways. So those are some of the things that are critical needs for us, and also include things like distributing pieces of information, books, et cetera, so kids and families have what they need.
And so, we're joined by Cindy Eggleton. She is the CEO of Brilliant Detroit, joining us on the Megacast. You can learn more information about how you can support the organization, including volunteering, and learn more information as well as read their blog on their website, brilliantdetroit.org. Again, that is brilliantdetroit.org. And so you mentioned that there's a big focus at this moment in time on recovery education. There continues to be that big focus because of the, for lack of a better term off the top of my head, learning loss that's been experienced during the pandemic, and because of the circumstances that differ from one child or one family to another, in one neighborhood to another. With that being the case, what are some of the more common programs that are being undertaken at the Brilliant Detroit locations at this time?
So we have a platform of programs. We have 100 partners in our work. So you come in and you can get just about anything you need. And that platform is around education, but it's also around health and family support. All of those areas are really important. If you're not able to have proper nutrition or eat or physical activity, you're not going to do as well on your learning, right? But we also work with both kids and adults. So we are running all kinds of programs at this time, and some of those highlights are actually around health. How do you take care of your social, emotional, and mental health needs at this time? How do you maintain physical activity? What do we do? What do I do with my parenting skills at a period where I feel stressed? All of those things are offered. I want to also say we work belly to 8. So we have programs for little ones and parents of little ones, 0 and up, how to build language skills, etc. Although we are having challenges, obviously, with COVID, the world isn't going to stop, and these kids deserve everything they can get to be successful as adults.
So as you've mentioned, Cindy, because this is focused on the education of the kids, but it's also these locations that, through your organization are effectively community centers as well. And so you're focusing not just on the child, but also on the family. So with that being the case, during the pandemic on the education front for our children, how has your organization, especially of late, been working to address the needs of the parents in that situation? Because those individuals are so key in those kids' education as well.
They're everything. And we believe a parent is the first teacher, and they should help lead. So we have a huge amount of efforts and programs for the parents, which include parenting skills, workshops, health programs. We also have GED programs, as well as just general information about how to build and feel better yourself from a social, emotional, and a resilience. The other thing that we do is we build family connection. We have programs that help build what's good in your family and strengthen that. All of those things are really important. As adults, and I think we can all relate to this, we're stressed out, right? Every day is something new, and it's really hard. But I think the most important thing for adults and also for kids, and we've continued that even when it's virtual, is what they find is each other. Okay? We're a disconnected world. How do we, in this environment, stay connected? I can't tell you how often I hear that over and over and over again as a critical need. And so within our programming, we build them as cohorts. So you're not just coming one and done. You are learning and growing together with others, and it is very, very relational. It is critical. A good friend of mine who used to work in the federal government around education and community partnerships said, it's relationships before curriculum. I think in this world, sometimes we forget that we are humans and we think we can just give something to somebody, they can show up to a class and it's all good. But at base, we are people. And so we really build that into everything we do.
We're joined by Cindy Eggleton. She is the CEO of Brilliant Detroit. You can learn more about the organization by visiting their website at brilliantdetroit.org. And so we talked about volunteers earlier on in this discussion, Cindy. What are some areas of support currently where volunteers are most needed?
Yeah, I'm just going to say we are the lifeblood of Brilliant Detroit is also our volunteers. We call it zip code, neighbor to neighbor, regardless of zip code. I want to point out that we have volunteers from over 250 zip codes that work with us. And that is an amazing statement in a world that sometimes doesn't feel that people are there for each other, to say how much people are there for each other. So top on our list is we need individuals that can sign up 2 hours a week on 1 hour, 2 different days to help mentor and tutor children. That's a number one priority. Another priority is we have a virtual storyteller club, a club where people can actually come in and they can read stories that can then be broadcast and be given to kids. That's another major need. We also have needs in regards to special skills that people might want to give and surround along with the work that we're doing. It can be in regards to strategy, it can be in regards to just about anything. That is also an important piece of what we need and want at this time.
We're joined by Cindy Eggleton, the CEO of Brilliant Detroit, joining us on the Megacast, also the co-founder of Brilliant Detroit. And so you have your organization's got a big goal for 2024. They want to have 24 sites set up by that time. What are some of the plans that are going into fulfilling that goal, and what does that mean then for Detroit families, for the children, for the citizens of the city?
Thank you for that question, and I think that's the piece that makes me most excited. I am truly in my purpose right now. I think the big piece is how do we fundamentally provide opportunity so that Detroiters' lives are changed? When we get to 24 sites, and we currently have 12 sites open, when we have 24, we can change population level change. So right now, reading at grade level, which is a critical indicator of success in life, is less than 16% for Detroit kids. We can change that number. That is a goal we all want to get behind. That begins to change the world. Because of the number of kids and families we serve, we're able to step into that, and so we are in it wholeheartedly. On average for the kids, and we have multiple different programs for reading depending on where the kids and families are, and multiple partners have grown 3 reading levels. That's a big deal. And so those are some of the things that we really want to change. We can also change health measures, et cetera. So in all ways, what we are trying to do is to provide safe, welcoming spaces where people can feel connected and get what they need. Everybody wants what's best for their families.
Cindy, we appreciate your time. Thank you for telling us more about your organization, some of the future goals, and giving us some insight into the continued challenges of providing quality education to our kids, given the circumstances we're under with the ongoing pandemic.
Thank you. And anybody can get more information or reach out via info@brilliantdetroit.org or visiting our website. I really appreciate being on here.
We appreciate having you. Thank you very much. Again, that website, brilliantdetroit.org. Plenty of information there about how you can get involved with the organization and provide this educational aid to children in the city of Detroit in these different neighborhoods. You can get involved, how you can donate, and learn more about the organization, and of course find all the contact info you need, including their phone number as well as that email that Cindy just gave out, info@brilliantdetroit.org, by visiting their website, brilliantdetroit.org. We're going to take one final break. On the other side, we'll be joined by Rebecca Salminen Witt. She is the Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer with the Detroit Historical Museum. We'll talk about some of their exciting exhibits coming up and their other plans for 2022. That's next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Whether you're the city,
the county,
or the Huron River Watershed Council,
we work together to protect water resources for everyone.
Most of the pollution entering our rivers is carried by rainwater that runs off roads, parking lots, and rooftops.
A rain garden helps catch stormwater runoff.
Rain gardens and their plants help dirty runoff soak into the ground.
You can do your part to help keep our water clean.
Learn about rain gardens and native plants.
So consider a rain garden in your home landscaping.
Catch the runoff with a rain garden.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
I couldn't breathe at all. There was lots of talk about putting me on a ventilator. I thought I was gonna die. I was 39 weeks pregnant and had a scheduled C-section. During that time, I got COVID and was hospitalized for a month. I had a blood clot in my lungs. It caused me to go into right-sided heart failure. I was really scared. I kept texting my husband and my mom, telling them how scared I was, and I was worried that he was gonna grow up without a mom. And then I was worried if, when I did get home, that he wouldn't know who I was. You know, being 27 and a mom and a wife and having that all almost taken away from me. It's scary, and if a vaccine can prevent that from happening, why not? Get your vaccine. I don't want this to happen to anybody else.
A message from the staff of Michigan's Crime Victim Compensation Program.
Anyone can be a victim of crime
and suffer lasting trauma, physically, emotionally, and financially.
But you are not alone.
If you're struggling financially due to a crime,
we're here
for you.
Find out if you qualify for crime victim compensation.
Call 877-251-7373 or visit michigan.gov/crime-victim.
A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Victim Services.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanted to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you did. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe. You can learn more information about all of our guests, find their interviews on demand, as well as watch our full episodes. Learn more information about everywhere that we broadcast live and live to tape Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon, by visiting our website at civiccentertv.com and clicking on our Megacast link. Our final guest today is Rebecca Salminen Witt. She is the Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer with the Detroit Historical Museum, back with us again on the Megacast. Rebecca, thank you for being with us.
Well, thanks for having me. Always fun to be on.
Appreciate having you on. So we're starting off the new year strong. We got events coming up very soon on Monday, January 17th, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. There will be a special event at the Historical Museum. Can you tell us a little bit about that event?
Oh, yeah. You know what? We have a really fun time every Martin Luther King Day, and this one is going to be super special. The event is from 10 to 2, so we start off at 10 a.m. right off the bat with the Renaissance High School choir kind of singing us into the event for the day. And the day is going to be really filled with a lot of really cool stuff. So we've got the City of Detroit Arts and Culture Director, Rochelle Riley, who's going to be here talking about her new children's book, which is called That They Lived, African Americans Who Changed the World. She's actually going to be doing two talks, one right off the bat at 10:15 and another one at 11:45. So you have a couple of chances to catch Rochelle. Her book is available in the gift shop, and we're offering 20% off that day. So a good opportunity to grab that book for your little ones and listen to Rochelle talk about the experience of writing it and kind of what the book means to children today. We're really looking forward to having her there. There's going to be guided tours. If you are interested in coming for MLK Day and you're an adult, guided tours of our award-winning Detroit 67 Perspectives exhibition. Those will be going off at 10:30, 11:15, and 12:30. So lots of opportunities to see Detroit 67 and get kind of that guided interactive experience with that exhibit. It's a special exhibit, and even if you've seen it before, it's well worth another trip through, especially with one of our really awesome docents. There's going to be more live performances, so we're going to have some dancing in the house, some additional singing. Elisa Glazer is going to be with us, who's a spoken word poet. She'll be performing that day, and we kind of end the day perfectly for Dr. King's birthday with cupcakes and singing of the birthday song right at between 1:30 and 2. The day wraps up at 2 p.m. So a lot of fun on the 17th for Martin Luther King Day.
Yeah, a lot of fun on that event, and a lot of fun every day with other events and happenings at the Detroit Historical Museum. You can learn more information by visiting DetroitHistorical.org. And so, Rebecca, given the situation we're in with COVID-19, with rising cases here in Michigan and across the U.S. Due to the Omicron variant, have there been any changes in the way that the Historical Museum operates, particularly for events like this Martin Luther King Jr. Day event, or even just walk-in visitation?
For sure. Well, masks are required. So if you're visiting the museum anytime, including at any of the events, we ask you to wear a mask. And for events particularly like these, we really work hard to limit the numbers of people who are allowed to come to the event. So, it's a 72,000 square foot museum. It's very possible to socially distance there. And we help the situation out by limiting the number of participants at our event. I think for the Martin Luther King Day event, there are 100 advance tickets available, and there'll be a few tickets available day of at the door as well. But we'll be well under 200 participants in our 72,000 square foot museum on that day. So, those are the things that we do on a regular basis. Obviously, we are, we're concerned like everybody is. And so when we've got things planned that are more appropriate or possible to do remotely, we do take a close look at what's happening out in the world. And our Third Thursday events, for instance, most of those are happening online right now because it's possible to do them online. You get the same effect from attending a lecture online as you do in person, maybe a little less fun. You don't get the in-person back and forth conversation, but it's possible to do them online. So those we've moved online.
We're joined by Rebecca Salminen Witt. She is the Chief Marketing Officer and so as the marketing officer and the chief strategy officer as well at the Detroit Historical Museum, joining us on the Megacast. And so while we're on the topic of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which is just a week from Monday, this upcoming Monday, it'll be a week after that. There's some historical significance related to Dr. King here in the Detroit area. And on June 23rd, 1963, it was a big day where a crowd of estimated about 125,000 people, including Dr. King, walked from Woodward Avenue to what's now the TCF Center, where he delivered a speech at an event called the Walk to Freedom. Tell us a little bit about that event, about that day, and some of the ways that your museum on Martin Luther King Jr. Day may be commemorating that historical day in Detroit's history.
Well, I think probably the walk that people remember the most actually happened in 1968, and that was the first time Dr. King delivered his I Have a Dream speech, was right here in Detroit. And so we do, celebrate that history on Martin Luther King Day, but all the time. And so that's one of the reasons we're giving those tours of the Detroit 67 Perspectives exhibit during that time frame as well, because on Martin Luther King Day, it's really important to remember the 60s and remember kind of Detroit's role in what happened during that time frame, and kind of help us frame where we are today and think about where we want to be in another 50 years. That's what Detroit 67 was all about for the Detroit Historical Society and for Detroit in general. And so we're keeping that work alive by making the Detroit 67 exhibit permanent. It's a permanent part of our museum now. That exhibit isn't going away. And so even if you can't make it down or you don't feel safe on January 17th, it's still going to be there. And I encourage you to come and kind of absorb some of that history. If you were there back in the day, I can't tell you how many 12-year-old people I met who were 12 in 1967, but kind of remembering what that was like. But if you weren't there, if you were younger than that, and you find yourself as a Detroiter or a Metro Detroiter now, kind of helping understand how that history has helped inform where we find ourselves today. It's an important thing to do, and the exhibit has won every award in the country and took second across the world in 2019, and so it's a good one.
We're joined by Rebecca Salminen Witt. She is the Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer at the Detroit Historical Museum. You can learn more information about the museum, including its permanent exhibits, such as Detroit 67, by visiting their website at detroithistorical.org. And so, Rebecca, there's other great events that are coming up later on in the month as well. On January 23rd, the ship models exhibit at the Dawson Great Lakes Museum will be opening. Can you tell us about that exhibit and what people can expect to experience when they go and they experience that exhibit at the Dawson Great Lakes Museum?
Oh, for sure. I always like to tell folks, winter is a lovely time to visit Belle Isle. I know we're all used to going in the summer for our picnics, but it's really beautiful in the winter, and there's no better place to experience Belle Isle in the wintertime than the Dawson Great Lakes Museum. We are open all winter, and this winter we're really excited because we are staging a new exhibition throughout the museum. It's called Maritime Miniatures, the Art of the Ship Model. The Detroit Historical Society has one of the biggest and most sort of world-renowned collections of model Great Lakes ships in existence. Now, you can always see one or two of those on display at the museum, but it's been over 20 years since we've really staged a full-scale exhibition of these models. So we're going to bring 150 of these models out. We've got about 200 of them in the collection. Some of them, honestly, are too delicate to move. They are in need of repair and conservation. They have to be, as you can imagine, with how delicate these ship models are, they have to be very carefully stored and moved and displayed, which requires some additional kind of care. And the vitrines, the glass boxes that we store these in, those have to be special and the right size and that kind of thing. So we're bringing 150 of them out. We're filling the museum with them. And there are some really special ones. The oldest model we have was built in 1854. So think about a guy making a model. The ship that he made a model actually stopped sailing in 18 I think just before that. It was called the Mayflower, but it's not the Mayflower that you're thinking of. This is the Mayflower, which is a passenger steamship. It was operated by Michigan Central Railroad, and it went between Detroit and Buffalo. So this guy made this very intricate model in 1854. He displayed it at the Michigan State Fair and actually won a medal for it. So that medal you'll be able to see from the 1854 State Fair is mounted on the front deck of this model, and that's going to be in the museum for you to see. We've got another model, the Le Griffon, which is a model of the very first sailing ship ever to be built and launched in North America. So this thing was built and launched in 1679. It was launched in, the Niagara River. It sailed on its maiden voyage and disappeared, never returned to port after its maiden voyage. So this model is one that really helps historians understand how French-made sailing vessels of the time looked and operated, and kind of the scale of those models. One of the things about these models that you're going to be able to see at the Dawson beginning on January 23rd is that they are built to scale. So the plans that are used to build these models could be used right now to build another full-size ship that's exactly the same as the ship as it once existed. So they're really amazing. I like to say, if you were a kid who loved to build models when you were little, or maybe you were one of those Lego guys who loved to build little intricate things with Legos, or maybe you were a girl who loved doll houses. These models really appeal to all of those things. Also, if you're a hardcore maritime historian, you're going to be able to see in all of the detail what the ships of yesteryear that no longer exist actually looked like. So it's going to be really exciting. We're very excited to have all of these models on display. As I mentioned, we've got 150 of them. We don't have all 200 of them because some of them require conservation. And because of that, we're actually charging a $5 admission fee to the museum during the run of this exhibit, and all of those funds are going to go directly to conserving the rest of those models. So the next time we stage an exhibit like that, we can pull all 200 of them out. So we're really excited about the opportunity.
We're joined by Rebecca Salminen Witt. She is the Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer at the Detroit Historical Museum. You can learn more information by visiting DetroitHistorical.org. And so, Rebecca, given the circumstances of the pandemic, are your regular listed hours the same? Have they changed? What are they at this time?
Our regular hours that you can find on our website, DetroitHistorical.org, have remained the same. So at the Dawson Great Lakes Museum, we are open Friday through Sunday, 10 to 5. At the Detroit Historical Museum, which is on Woodward Avenue, and that's where our MLK celebration is going to be, we're open Thursday through Sunday, so an extra day at the main museum. 10 to 5 Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and 1 to 5 on Sunday at that museum. I do recommend that everybody check the website before they come on down for a visit. We're not requiring advance tickets right now, but check the website just to make sure that there's not a surprise closure because maybe we're down staff, or who knows what can happen, kind of top down from the government. So we always post that on all of our social media sites. You can find us on Facebook or Instagram and Twitter, but the website is really the best place to look, just to make sure that if you're planning to come down, that we are open and our hours remain the same.
Well, Rebecca, we appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us, telling us about some of these events coming up in the next few weeks here in January, and all the permanent events and other interesting things at the Historical Museum.
Thanks for having me. It's always great to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to tell you about all the fun things we're doing.
We appreciate having you on. Thank you very much, Cindy. You can learn more information about everything happening at the Detroit Historical Museum and learn more about these events by visiting DetroitHistorical.org. And again, the location of the main museum is just north of the main Detroit Public Library, just off of Woodward in Detroit. And then the Dawson Great Lakes Museum is on Belle Isle. That is going to do it for today's edition of the Megacast. I want to thank you all for for joining us today on the program. Thank all of our guests, including Rebecca Salminen Witt, Cindy Eggleton, the CEO of Brilliant Detroit, Dr. Elizabeth Boulat from Henry Ford Maple Grove Center as well, Amy Cutler, the president of the National Council of Jewish Women in Michigan, and Carrie Shochet, the Purple Squirrel Advisors founder, for being with us on the show. You can learn more information about all of our partnering television, radio, and web outlets, as well as find all of these interviews, our full episode from today, and all of our other shows in the past as well by going to civiccentertv.com/megacast. And there we'll have links to all those partnering stations. And then if you click on our Watch Full Episodes or Watch Full Interviews link about midway down the page, usually by mid to late afternoon, we'll have those all posted on our website. Big thank you to our crew as well. Calvin Brown, our studio producer and board operator, in here each and every day with me from 10 a.m. to noon. Jared Clark, our Zoom producer, back at our offices of My Michigan TV. Our booking producer, Larry Nyland, as well as Maddie Mustrian out at Master Control. We want to thank you all for tuning in. Again, go to our coronavirus page at civiccentertv.com to keep up to date with information on COVID-19 from the CDC, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and the Oakland County Health Division. That is it for today's edition of the show. We'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m.